Lieutenant Worf has no objections to tests. Geordi can see heart rates, and brinkmanship is a dangerous game. Hello, everybody, and welcome to The Seventh Rule with Sirach Lofton.
Hello, hello.
My name is Ryan T. Husk, and today we're doing a review of Star Trek The Next Generation, Season 3, Episode 7, The Enemy, written by David Kemper and Michael Piller, directed by David Carson. This was November 4th, 1989. Where were you? We have a very special guest today. You know him as Colonel Green in a couple episodes of Star Trek Enterprise. He was also in Voyager, a couple episodes of Deep Space Nine. And today, or for today's episode, he played Patak, the Romulan. Please welcome Steve Rankin. Steve,
Hello.
It's so freaking great to have you. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you. Thank you for having me. It's a pleasure. Star Trek is a wonderful, wonderful world. The fans are absolutely the best. And I just keep being amazed that it's the gift that keeps on giving. Little did I know that this was the first Star Trek episode that I did, that I would be sitting here talking to you, wonderful gentlemen, and remembering these things which have become what I refer to as TV Shakespeare dialogue that I got to say on this episode.
Right. That's it's definitely a thing. Hey, everybody, very quickly, check this out. What are you doing in March? I'll tell you what Sirach and I and many others are doing. We are going to Creation Entertainment's Trek to San Francisco with tons of special guests, dozens of Star Trek celebrities will be there. Check it out, March 8th through 10th. You can get it, get the tickets, hotel information, creationent.com. That's creationent.com. You've got to go. It's going to be a blast. We're going to be up on stage. A lot of people are going to be there. It's going to be amazing. Please go. See you there.
I'll be there. That's going to be exciting.
Well, let's talk
Steve,
about this episode.
Yeah. And first, I wanted to start with just complimenting you on your performance, Steve, because really, I thought this episode was very well done from start to finish. And the performances really, just evoked a lot of emotions from me as the viewer. I felt like my strings were getting pulled, and I knew it, and I also loved it. And really credit and kudos to you and your performance, because I think that you played an intricate part of, how I walked away from this episode feeling. Can you talk about a little bit this performance in this episode?
Well, the really interesting thing about The Next Generation is they really delved into the backstories of the characters. And that really hadn't been done on television before. Procedural dramas and courtroom dramas, of course, they have some history where they go back into things. But that's why I think Star Trek is it hadn't been on the air for 20 years when The Next Generation came on. And they did something different in which they went and they told the backstories of these people. They weren't just people on a ship. And that's why I think they got the actors that are involved that have done these Star Trek things, because the language it's different. I refer to it as television Shakespeare, but it's loaded with it's technical things, of course, but then it's loaded with a lot of energy and emotion. And in this particular episode, it was the first one in which a morality issue had to be dealt with. And that was Worf's decision to not give a transfusion to the dying Romulan that was on board. And that was a big deal for them to do at the time. And so, it wasn't unlike, you were moved by it, which I'm really grateful for. And I was too whenever I'm watching it, because they suddenly got very quiet. It was just a different kind of feeling of a show, because the stakes were pretty high. They didn't want to risk inciting the Romulan fleet to start an attack again, to open up the wars again. And so actually letting somebody die, and at the same time having somebody save a life happening at the same time, that's pretty powerful stuff.
Yes. Yeah, that was what moved me about the episode. Michael Pillar's fingerprints all over this one. You can feel the layers and also the multiple plot lines is part of the driving force behind the tempo. But what was it like also with David Carson? Because I think this is the first time we see his name in the credits, at least I can remember. And David did the pilot episode of Deep Space Nine and The Emissary, and I really love his directing style. I think he's really brilliant. Can you talk about working with him?
Yeah, well, first of all, it was great because he, television directors in particular, whenever you have a good experience, what happens on a television episodic is this. If you come in as a guest star, everybody else that's there as a regular is a regular. The director is also a guest star. He is coming in and functioning really just basically the same way that I am, or any guest star. And so he has control over it, yes, but at the same time, he's trying to find his way among these characters that he may or may not know, and also with the producers that are guiding him to do things in a certain way. And I think he really found a good home there because he ended up directing quite a few things. And I was on the pilot of Deep Space Nine, so him bringing me back. So when I went into the audition, he went, "Oh yeah, Steve, you were on the first one I did. You're in." So it was just great. And I subsequently auditioned for him for a couple of movies that he started directing then at the time, and he was always so gracious and so wonderful, and just smart and a really good technician too. But he really knew how to talk to the actors and respected and allowed us to do what it was that we needed to do, and then also gave us good insights at the same time. So it's really a pleasure when you've got a good director like that, because they're not always nice.
You were a Cardassian on the pilot of Deep Space Nine.
I was a kind, but I was the first kind Cardassian. Remember, I was a doctor. I was a medical officer, and I talked down my commanding officer, actually, saying that I refused to do something. So it was very, and trying to say compassionate. I was the first compassionate Cardassian. So.
Of many. What?
Yeah, not many. Talk to Casey Biggs about that.
I want to say, one of the things, talking to you, you're obviously unlike this character that you play. And I wanted to ask you about getting into the mindset of a character like this, because I really felt like, oh, this is like old school racism undertones in this delivery. I think the mixing of blood or something to that effect really kind of struck me like boom. And I wanted to ask you, how do you prepare mentally to get into that kind of mindset for this role? And also, do you use the makeup as a crutch of some sort to help you, something that helps you get into the character?
Well, you can't avoid it. When you get in the chair with the Westmores, Mike Westmore, which is this is the first time I'd ever, well, no, that's not true. I was in Alien Nation, in which they put the whole head over you. That was the first, claustrophobic mild, because you were in the thing. So I had basically a beetle wig and pointy ears and a forehead. That's the Romulan thing. So, you get there very early in the morning, like at 4:30 or 5 o'clock. You sit down in the chair. They get you hot towels. They get you all relaxed. And then, Mike Westmore and his crew, they were just so great. They made the ears for you, made all the stuff, said, this is how it's going to look. And then as you sort of sit there with your eyes closed for a while. And when you open them up, you go, oh. And it's something like that. The very, very good point is, and in working the theater, this is another thing that I always tell whenever I'm directing, tell actors. I say, let the makeup do the acting for you. You don't need to do a whole bunch. What you need to do is be able to tell the truth of the lines in the story. And so the way that this was laid out with this conflict and this issue between these two races, it was very Shakespearean. I say it's Shakespearean. That he comes and he gets in my face and he says, I need to be able to give you a transfusion. And I pull him close to me and grab, and then I remember grabbing Dorn's his little gold thing that he had across his chest, and grabbed it. And then he grabbed my wrist, and I pulled him close and whispered into his ear, "I would rather die than pollute my body with Klingon filth." Ooh. And it was
it was tough.
It was cold, man. It was cold. And when you got a wonderfully written line like that, you don't want to race through that. You want to lay it in and make sure that it's heard. And it was very, very, very interesting. My wife always says this. She says, "You're such a cream puff," and I play a lot of bad guys. and so people think I'm a tough guy, but I'm not tough. I scream and run the other way if there's any violence or anything.
I don't know. You sounded pretty tough when you said something to the effect of dying it with my hands on your throat. Right?
Oh, yeah.
I was like, that's a really good line too. This was not a character that was fighting to live. This was a character that was fighting to fight until death. Yeah,
that's right. Yes. Yeah. And they when I was in sick bay, and they had me in this on the table. If I can tell a funny anecdote, I don't know whether.
Oh yeah.
They might enjoy this. Now, Jonathan Frakes and I had been friends for a while before I done.
That was going to be my next question. If you knew anybody had a relationship.
And so I had I had actually been at a party with Jonathan, a little dinner party in Santa Monica with some friends. His wife was there and some other people. And so, and this was like, I don't know, probably about a month before I got this job. And so all of a sudden I got out of makeup, went to my trailer, and all of a sudden, boom, 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 pounding on the door. I opened it up and I said, "Okay, I'm coming. I opened it up and said, "Rankin, you're in this show." I went, "Yo." I said, yo. I said, yo, thanks for giving him a tip about me. He goes, no, man, you did this on your own. You did it on your own. You're a good guy. He says, "Come on, we're gonna have some fun." So now I'm in sick bay, and I'm laying down, and they've got me strapped into the thing, and I can't move my arms. It's across my chest, so I can't move. And Picard comes in, and then Frakes walks in afterwards, and he goes, "Wait, I can see the guest stars not wearing a dance belt."
Oh,
because you're in these union suits, and because I was trapped, I couldn't cover in the appropriate place, and was very nervous. And of course, we all started laughing a lot. Had a very good time. So that sort of set the tone for how we were going to be working. And I suddenly saw how much of a blast they had when they were doing this stuff. They all loved working with each other. And Jonathan was so gracious, because there was one point also. He said, "Hey, Rankin, want a break? Come on, I want to show you something." So we went to another studio, and it's where the bridge was. And so we go in there, and it's all dark. And Frakes gets on the phone and he goes, "Hey, it's Frakes here. Can you turn the lights on in Studio 4? And so some lights came on, and he went, "There it is." And I looked up, and it's the bridge. He says, "Go up there." And he says, the seat was there. So I sat in the seat. He says, "Makes you feel like you got a big
roll."
And I said, "Yeah, it does."
Back to that dance belt thing.
Back to that dance belt.
Wow.
Oh, wow.
So good guy.
Those are great stories. We love to hear about, just the camaraderie, because you could feel it in this episode. I felt the camaraderie in this episode. There was something about the way, I don't know, the feel in this particular episode reminds me of the overall feel of what I think of when I think of Next Generation. I think this is the first time it started to get there in this last couple of episodes, but this particular one, it's just, I think the way they focused on so many different characters. They gave you a Geordi story. They gave you a Worf story. Picard had a lot to do in this episode. Riker was pretty prominent. So because it was spread out so well, and I felt each performance was genuine, This episode resonates a lot with me. Um, and then you play a Klingon, which is crazy because I think you play a Klingon in another episode. Is that right?
Yeah, in the Deep Space Nine, yes.
Yeah.
With Tim Russ. Tim Russ and I stole the symbiote with John
Right.
Glover.
Oh yes.
Right.
John Glover was our boss, and it was so, we had so much fun doing that. I mean, that Klingon makeup it's intense. I mean, you really have to just sort of go to your trailer and just lay down, just chill out, because they got you in elevator shoes and all that stuff. And I think we had to speak some Klingonese too, and that was Tim Russ's first episode that he'd ever done.
I recall.
Oh, wow.
Steve, I wanted to ask you: were you a Star Trek fan, or were you aware of Star Trek before you came on set, or were you not aware of the madness that Star Trek fans and the Star Trek community is? What was that? What was your experience like?
I absolutely. I grew up watching the Star Trek because it was it was such a different thing that was on programming on television at the time, even though it felt like a Western in outer space. And I remember my dad, God rest his wonderful soul, his name is George Rankin. He liked watching it. And so we would sit and watch Star Trek, and it was just great. I mean, I was a fan of it, and whenever it came back, I was like, God, great, with this new channel called Fox that it was going to be on. And, it was all very, very exciting to be able to see it again. So I was unaware of the huge fan base. I was already a fan, but I was unaware of it until the first convention that I went to. That was sort of like that was the eye opener. Finally, when I went to Vegas, the first one we went to, I think, was in Oklahoma, that I was brought out on. That was it was a smaller gathering of people, but still, it was very, very, very interesting. But going to Vegas the first time, it was just crazy.
What was that? Oklahoma? Was that in Tulsa?
Yeah. That was the first time the Enterprise Blues Band. But not the first time. It was the second time. I take this all back. The first one that we went to was in Dusseldorf, Germany. That's the first convention that I ever went to. Flying over to Germany, and it was the first time the Enterprise Blues Band played. We had no idea what was going to happen. They didn't know what was going to happen. And at the time, as a side entertainment for the conventions, the Enterprise Blues Band was the first one. Nobody else did anything. Tim Russ wasn't around.
Yeah.
He wasn't doing his thing. And so we didn't know what was going to happen.
Yeah.
No, you're the first. So tell me, how did that start? Because you're the pioneer in a particular. This is an original thing now that has become duplicated by many people, including the Rat Pack. So how did you guys start?
Well, it was started with Vaughn Armstrong, because he had started going to these conventions, and he said he was backstage with Bob Card, and Vaughn went, I don't know how this works. What am I supposed to do? What are we going to do? And he said, don't worry about it. They're going to ask you some questions. And he says, if I don't know what the answer is, I just sing a song. And Vaughn went, God. So Vaughn started bringing his harmonica, and then he started playing ukulele. So he said he walked out on stage and, suddenly looked behind him, and it was like a jumbotron, seeing all the pores in his skin, this gigantic thing. And he said he just kind of froze. And so he called me up and he said, look, this is my experience doing these things. And Bob Picard gets up and sings. He said, I've written a couple of songs about Star Trek. And so I went, okay. Well, and his songwriting ability was, he knew that I was a musician. So I said, can you help me? So I sat with him over, I don't know, quite a few sessions, I guess, listened to his songs, and they were very clever and a lot of fun. They just needed arranging and shifting around, and chord changes affected properly and stuff, because he just sort of had a melody, but he didn't really know what he was doing musically. So we got them together, and then Casey got involved with us, and then we started doing the same thing. So between the three of us, we got these harmonies and really arranged the tunes, and then Casey started writing some, and then I brought some music to it that were not necessarily Star Trek based, but that's sort of how it happened. And then and then then Ron Moore, the special effects Ron Moore.
Yeah, B More.
Ron B. Moore. He was a guitar player that came and wanted to join us, and Richard Hurd playing the washed up bass just
God
to get in there.
bless Richard Hurd.
And yeah, God bless him. And so we started getting together over at Vaughn's, and we'd have these nutty sessions to get all this stuff organized. Then we went in the studio and recorded, and made the first CD. This is the Enterprise Blues Band. It's all signed and autographed. And then it's led to our second one, which was called Intergalactic Blues. And there they are, everybody. And then it led to the newest one, which is There We Are. And it is called Desert Rats.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and this one's they're all really good for various different reasons, but that's sort of what happened is we went in there and played, and in Dusseldorf, Germany, we had no idea, nor did the people that ran the convention know what was going to happen. So they had a theater, and there was 1,000 people in there, and we came out on stage, and it was like we were U2 or something. We walked out, they just roared. I mean, it was really, really kind of overwhelming and fun, and we went, okay, well, we've actually got something here. And they all wanted CDs, and we didn't have anything at the time, so that's how that all happened. Then we went to the studio, and now we're all old jaded studio musicians now.
Germans like to party, but also on that note, I guess I shouldn't have said note, but on that subject, can you tell us a little bit about what's going on with the Star Trek Rat Pack? You guys have just finished something, right?
Yeah, the Rat Pack has been asked many, many, many times if they have a CD, because at the end of the concerts, Vaughn and Casey would sell our Enterprise Blues Band CDs. They would sell them, and the fans all loved them and wanted to have them, but they all asked for years, and there has not been a CD. And so one of the wonderful fans, Michael Morrell, had been telling Casey and Vaughn and everybody for years that you need to get one made. And so finally, he said, look, I want to be exec producer of this. Let's get this done. And so we got it organized, and Casey approached me and said, hey, can you help us out? Can you help us find the studio? Would you be interested in producing this for us? And I said, okay, yeah, I'll help you get this done so we can get it done efficiently. Because they're pretty loose, the Rat Pack is very loose when they get up there and sing. and whenever you go into a studio, singing all those parts when you're doing it live is one thing, but when it's going to be recorded, you got to nail the parts and get them down. So we went into the studio, and everybody did a very good job. We had a wonderful engineer named Frank Rosato, who did the recording and the mastering, and also has great ears. So, and he's also fast. He runs he runs a mixing board like somebody's chasing him. I mean, it's unbelievable how quick he is. I mean, he can do an edit just like that. Somebody go, oh, I sang a wrong note, and he goes, that's okay. I went and I found it where you sang it perfect. It's done. and so he was really good. So it made the process go quickly, and everybody, Max and Jeff and Vaughn and Casey, everybody felt very relaxed. So we produced the very first Rat Pack CD.
There it is.
Everybody.
That is
gorgeous.
Breaking news.
And there they are. Can you see them?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Yeah. So that's going to be up in San Francisco that you mentioned. These will be there. And also, for those of you that are going on the cruise, Michael Morrell is going to be there. The Rat Pack nor the Enterprise Blues Band are not going to be there, but Michael Morrell is going to be there with some of these CDs, getting it out there and getting the word out. So
that means everybody at home, if you ever see Mike Morrell, he's not allowed to buy his own drink, everybody. It is your duty to feed him and put drinks down his gullet, because he's earned it. He has finally convinced these guys to capture this moment that we all love during conventions. Steve, we only have you for a couple more minutes here. Can we talk a bit more about this here episode? When you saw the script, or your parts of the script, What was your thinking there? Did you think, boy, this is a juicy role, it's very deep, or were you not able to see like the full script and understand the context behind it, or how much do you know?
They give you okay. So what happens is when you audition, they give you the sides of what it is. But I think even back then, perhaps we might have gotten the whole script, because they were. It was delicious. It was a meal to be able to read it because it's so textured and full of story. It's not just it's not just directions of where the camera's supposed to be and all that. It's really, really, really a story that had all of these different factors and parts that all culminated to the whole. In other words, it wasn't a story that was going on that was going to be picked up in the next episode. It was in totality all of the problems that they had to deal with. And the fact that there were two Romulans and we were separated, and one was on a planet and one was on the ship, I think it made it much more interesting. So whenever I looked at the part, of course, I went, man, this is, I knew where this guy was. And when you have good writing, you're able to attach yourself to it relatively quickly. I didn't have to manufacture anything for it. The text helped me do, it played to my strengths. I knew how to play this guy. I knew how to help it, and it was well suited to me. So it was like putting on a coat that fit perfectly. So, and then going in the room and for the first time and going, am I supposed to go use a weird voice or something because I'm going on Star Trek, and especially in the room with the producers and stuff that were in there, they were made you so relaxed and so comfortable and calm. And those things can be very nerve-wracking. But these guys were they have always been. Every time I've gone in, and the thing is you don't get a free pass on Star Trek. Just because you've been on it, it doesn't matter. You still have to go in and read and do the same thing. And it's always the same experience. It's always really good. So, and as an actor, when you walk in the room, if you've done your job, you should feel good about it. And I felt great about this. First time Star Trek audition, by the time I got home, I had the part. That was
wow.
That was it. So that was good. Yeah, well, no cell phones.
Quick question, Steve. Was this the planet's surface scenes, were they done on location or on the sound stage? I had that question when I was watching.
Me too.
It was on the sound stage.
Okay.
Yeah.
And then
there was so much mud and water. I was like, how did they put that all together?
Yeah. Spraying stuff.
It felt really big. And I felt like maybe they're on location for this. I couldn't tell, but it was very well done because of the lighting. It kept you kind of in suspense. The whole time I was in suspense. It was very unpredictable what kind of things would happen. That's what I think really made it great. But I want to say, Steve, one of the things that we've been saying on a consistent basis as we review these episodes is when an actor does a very good job, you walk away feeling some type of way, especially when they're villains. We've said that about Gul Dukat, Mark Alaimo, and the role that he's done. It's so believable that you actually hate the guy. Like I hate this guy. Even though that's not who he really is, and you kind of accomplished that for me in this episode. I was saying that damn Romulan, he doesn't deserve to live. And there was a moment where I actually had this kind of hatred. At the same time, I was hoping that you would get saved because I felt there was a moral dilemma there, right?
Mm-hmm. I agree. I think that's what made it. That's what made you pissed off at my character a little bit more. You were going, dude, come on.
If you just shut your mouth,
just shut up.
Dude, what's wrong with you? Shut up, man. You hate this guy that bad? You don't want to live?
But and getting back to what Mark said about the bad guys, the interesting thing about bad guys, I think James Cagney said this, and a lot of actors that play bad guys. You always have to, yes, they're a bad guy. You can't just go play bad guy. Bad guys like themselves. So you got to find out what it is that you like about yourself, about this guy. Now, if he has things that are, his behavior is despicable, like if you're going to be playing Hitler, You got to figure out some way to like this character that you're playing. You got to you need to be able to do that. And so the justification of this guy is he's a warrior. He's a warrior, and it's a little bit like if you've seen the National Geographic things in which a polar bear has been tranquilized, and then suddenly he's there, and then the people come up and try to. Sorry, lost you. You guys still there?
Yeah.
No, we're still here. Yeah.
So what happens is they're tranquilized, and then somebody comes up and tries to touch them, and they go. They refuse to be able to be touched by anything because they go, no, I'm in danger. And I think that's sort of what this character was doing a little bit. He didn't want to have anything to do with any. He was definitely, in an uncomfortable place and had to fight. He had to fight. That was his whole.
And that was the other thing I got from this as well, is that he was holding on to a secret, the same secret that the other guy was holding on to, the same secret that the other guy was holding on to, who was the captain of the ship that was coming in, the Romulan ship. There was a secret. Whatever you guys were doing there still remains a secret in this episode. And to me, that's what I got from your character was, I'm not going to tell. And it's like a mobster who's not going to snitch on the family, right? He's like, it doesn't matter what you do to me, I'm not going to tell. I don't want your help. Let me die, And I felt like it was kind of that kind of thing, because everybody was holding on. As a matter of fact, the guy who survives in the episode, he says at some point when he meets his commanding officer, he says, I didn't tell them a thing.
That's the first thing he said. Yep.
First thing he said.
That's right.
Very telling.
So that was to me the motivation behind also what the character was doing. Your character was like, I'm going to the grave with my secret. I don't care what, you guys can do all the kind of probing, investigating, whatever you want to do, but I'm not going to help you solve any puzzles or riddles here. This is my mouth is shut.
Mm-hmm.
Prisoner of war.
Right. Well, Steve, we really appreciate you taking the time to join us today. This was so cool. You portrayed a character that affected us, and it's pretty rare. It does happen, but it's pretty rare to be able to show up for one episode and walk away, and we remember you and talk about you 30 years later or whatever it happens to be. I mean, it is a very memorable character with a very memorable moment. And just want to say thank you for portraying that, for nailing it, and for joining us today, Steve.
Yeah, thank you guys so much. And all the fans out there, you are just the best fan base in the world, guaranteed.
And one other compliment I'd like to give you, Steve, is that your performance brought out some of the best performances from Worf that I've seen from Michael Dorn.
Point. Yeah.
And that is a compliment to the synergy you guys have together in those scenes. And so your performance also brought out the best in his character as well. So I thought kudos to both of you for making this really impactful for the viewer.
Mm-hmm.
Great. Thanks so much.
All right, everybody, stick around. We will be right back. Check out the Enterprise Blues Band and the Rat Pack, of course. We'll be right back on The Seventh Rule.